Welcome. Tonight, we find ourselves standing in a small town in southern Germany. In the year 1879, the air smells faintly of fresh bread from a nearby bakery, and the cobblestone streets are damp from an early spring rain. You can almost hear the clop of horses pulling carts past narrow brick houses, their windows framed with lace curtains. In one of those houses, a baby named Albert has just been born. His parents, Hermann and Pauline, don't yet know that their son's mind will one day change how humanity understands the universe. Right now, he's just a quiet little boy in a modest home filled with the comforting clutter of everyday life. You'd probably not last a week in this place. The winters bite hard. The stoves are temperamental, and the nights are lit only by flickering oil lamps, but there's a certain charm in its simplicity. Life here moves slowly, shaped by the rhythms of market days and Sunday church bells. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love for you to share in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step softly into the Einstein family home, a place that hums with the quiet work of a family business. Hermann sells featherbeds and other household goods, while Pauline tends to the children and plays the piano with gentle, deliberate hands. The sound of her music often fills the home, notes carrying through the small rooms like a calm heartbeat. Albert's early years are far from extravagant, but they rich in small moments that stay with him, walking with his father past the bustling market square, hearing the steady rhythm of the train as it pulls into the station, feeling the heavy texture of wool blankets in his parents' shop. He's a thoughtful child, slow to speak, which worries his parents at first. They wonder if something is wrong, but as time goes on, his quiet nature reveals itself to be more a matter of deep observation than delay. Historians still argue whether his late speech had any real connection to his later genius, or if it's just a romantic detail added to the story in hindsight. In the evenings, Albert often watches the light flicker against the walls, tracing faint shadows from the furniture. One evening, he is transfixed by a simple compass, an object that will play a subtle but important role in sparking his lifelong curiosity. But for now, he's too young to understand it fully. He's just noticing, as all children do, that the world is filled with mysteries. Munich soon becomes the family's home when Hermann moves the business there to pursue better prospects. The city is larger, noisier, and more colorful than UML, filled with grand buildings, beer halls, and long avenues. You walk with Albert through these streets, passing fountains where children toss pebbles and horses clatter over bridges. This is where he first encounters the structure and discipline of formal schooling, a world of uniforms, timetables, and stern teachers. At home, Pauline's music continues to fill the air, and she begins teaching Albert the violin. At first, he approaches it reluctantly, but slowly. The feel of the bow in his hand and the vibrations against his chin become part of his daily life. This early exposure to music will stay with him forever, a companion in moments of thought and solitude. The young Einstein doesn't fit perfectly into the school system. His mind wanders. The rigid drills of memorization feel confining to him, though he excels in certain subjects when they catch his interest. Teachers notice his quiet independence, though not always in a flattering way. Some mistake his thoughtfulness for defiance. Little do they know, he's already practicing the kind of patient observation and slow, deliberate reasoning that will later allow him to see the world differently from everyone else. As you walk through the family home on a late winter evening, you notice the faint smell of wood smoke and a pot of stew simmering on the stove. Herman sits at the table with papers spread out. Business is not going as well as he hoped. Times are changing and technology is advancing. He begins to think about moving again, this time toward opportunities in Italy. For Albert, these changes are disorienting, but they also open his eyes to new places, languages, and possibilities. Looking back now, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when the gentle curiosity that defined Einstein's life first took root. Maybe it was in those early hours of wandering Munich streets. Maybe it was in the quiet hum of the shop while his parents worked. Or maybe it was simply the nature of his mind, from the start slow to speak, but quick to wonder. The house is warm tonight, the fire crackling softly in the corner. Outside, the streets grow quiet as night settles over Munich. You sit in a small wooden chair near the window, watching the lamplighter make his way down the street, touching each post with a long pole, leaving behind little islands of golden light. Somewhere in that stillness, a young Albert lies awake in his bed, eyes open in the dark, already sensing that the world holds patterns and secrets worth uncovering. He doesn't yet know how far those questions will take him or how much his ideas will shape the future. For now, it's enough just to wonder. The streets of Munich have a crisp brightness this morning, the kind that comes after a night of steady rain. The air smells faintly metallic, and your shoes click against the cobblestones as you make your way toward the schoolyard. You can hear the echo of children's voices in the distance, laughter and footsteps blending with the church bells. Somewhere among them is a boy with neatly combed hair, a violin case under one arm, and a quiet look in his eyes that seems older than his years. Albert's school days are a mixture of discipline and daydreams. You follow him into the classroom, where wooden desks line up in perfect rows and the teacher's chalk squeaks against the board. The lessons are rigid, designed to mold obedient citizens, and there is little room for curiosity that strays beyond the curriculum. Albert listens, but his mind often drifts, sometimes to the shapes of the clouds outside, sometimes to the faint ticking of the classroom clock. Historians still argue whether this restlessness was a rebellion against authority or simply an early sign that his mind preferred wandering through ideas rather than marching in straight lines. In the afternoons, he returns home, where the air feels softer and the lighting gentler. Pauline greets him with a small smile and reminds him of his violin practice. At first, young Albert treats it like a chore, the notes squeaking unevenly under his bow. But over time, the music begins to speak to him. There's something soothing about the way sound vibrates through his fingertips, the way a melody can feel like a private conversation between the player and the instrument. Years later, he will say that music helped him think, helped him imagine patterns and structures in a way that words and numbers alone never could. One quiet evening, you sit with the Einstein family in their modest parlor. Herman is reading the newspaper, his brow furrowed at the stories of political tensions and economic uncertainty. Pauline is playing a gentle piece on the piano, her fingers moving with graceful precision. Albert sits nearby, violin in hand, following her lead. The warm, resonant notes fill the room, weaving a cocoon of calm around the family. It's here that you begin to notice how the rhythm of music mirrors the rhythm of his thoughts, slow, deliberate, and deeply focused. Outside the home, the city is changing. Electric street lamps are replacing gas ones. New factories are rising, and the sound of machinery hums in the distance. Technology is advancing, and Herman's business must keep pace. He introduces Albert to books on science and engineering, perhaps without realizing how much they will shape his son's thinking. You watch as Albert turns the pages slowly, absorbing diagrams of electrical circuits and mechanical designs. He's not memorizing for an exam, he's studying because he wants to understand. The violin remains a constant companion. Sometimes he plays just for himself, sometimes for family, friends who visit on Sunday afternoons. These gatherings are warm affairs, filled with conversation, pastries, and music. At one such gathering, a neighbor leans down to young Albert and asks if he plans to become a musician. He shakes his head with a shy smile. The truth is, music feels like a bridge way to cross from the world of feelings to the world of ideas. But school is less forgiving. Teachers expect precision in reciting lessons exactly as taught. And Albert's tendency to question the reasoning behind certain rules doesn't always sit well. One teacher, frustrated by his constant inquiries, warns him that he will never amount to anything if he doesn't learn to conform. The words hang in the air like a cold draft, but Albert simply lowers his gaze and keeps thinking. In that moment, you can almost see the quiet resistance forming inside him, the idea that understanding should come from questioning, not just from accepting. One rainy afternoon, as you walk with him home from school, Albert pauses to watch the water ripple in the street gutters. He notices how leaves drift along the current, caught in small whirlpools. Without realizing it, he's studying the same kinds of patterns that will later fascinate him in physics. He may not yet have the equations, but he already has the habit of looking closely. Evenings are often spent with a mix of homework and music, but sometimes the family will attend small concerts in the city. You walk with them into a warm hall where the scent of polished wood and candle wax hangs in the air. The orchestra begins to play, and Albert leans forward in his seat, eyes half closed, letting the sound wash over him. It's a memory he will carry quietly, just as he will carry the feeling of opening a book and finding a question inside it that no one else seems to be asking. Back in the classroom, he continues to surprise his peers with flashes of insights. While others rush to solve problems quickly, Albert lingers, turning them over in his mind, testing different angles. Sometimes his approach frustrates the teachers, but sometimes it produces answers that no one else had considered. The days roll by in this rhythm-strict lessons at school, warm music at home, and small private moments of observation. On one late autumn evening, you walk with him under a canopy of turning leaves. The streetlights glow softly, and the distant sound of a violin drifts from an open window. You can sense that these early years, shaped by discipline, music, and quiet reflection, are forming the inner landscape he will carry for life. Somewhere in that mix of notes and numbers, a mind is learning not just to remember, but to think. And thinking, for young Albert, is already becoming less about finding the right answer and more about discovering the right question. The afternoon light in Munich slants gently through the window, landing on a small wooden table where Albert sits with his elbows propped, chin resting on his hands. Before him lies a simple object, an old, brass-covered compass his father has just shown him. The needle, thin and dark, trembles slightly, then settles into its steady north-pointing position. You watch as his eyes widen, not with the fleeting curiosity of a child distracted by a shiny object, but with something deeper, slower, and more absorbing. He turns the compass over in his small hands, shakes it lightly, then sets it back down. No matter how he tilts or spins it, the needle stubbornly returns to the same direction. His father explains that the earth itself is like a giant magnet, guiding the needle through an invisible field. But for Albert, the real magic is in the word invisible. How could something unseen have such certain power over something he can hold? Historians still argue whether this exact compass moment was the true spark that ignited his obsession with unseen forces, or if it's more of a symbolic story, polished and passed down. But regardless, you can feel if this is a quiet turning point. The room is warm, the air tinged with the faint scent of oil lamps and polished wood. The ticking of the wall clock seems louder now, marking the moments as Albert continues to stare at the little device. It's not just a tool for finding your weight, it's a promise that there are hidden laws in the world, waiting to be uncovered. From then on, you notice him watching the world a bit differently. The swaying of tree branches in the wind, the way candle flames lean in a draught, the rippling surface of water when a pebble drops in, all of these are patterns, signals of unseen forces. He begins asking questions his parents can't always answer. And sometimes they smile at his persistence. Sometimes they sigh. But either way, they know their son's mind is restless in the best possible way. Days at school still bring their share of strict lessons and rote memorization. But even here, Albert starts looking for the why beneath the what. If the teacher explains how to solve a math problem, he wants to know why that method works, and if there might be another. His notebooks fill not just with answers, but with side notes and little diagrams that wander off the assigned page. One evening, after supper, Herman brings home some simple science books and lets Albert leaf through them. One diagram, in particular a picture of how currents in a wire can create a magnetic field, holds his attention. He imagines lines of force curling invisibly through the air, moving in perfect shapes. It's almost like music, he thinks, but for the eyes of the mind. There's a small, quirky detail from these years. When the family hosts friends for tea, Albert sometimes sneaks away to the corner of the room to dismantle small gadgets, clocks, wind-up toys, even a stubborn drawer latched us to see how they work. Pauline tolerates this as long as he puts them back together, which he often does, though sometimes with a piece or two left mysteriously over. As you walk with him through the narrow streets one cool spring morning, the air smells of damp stone and fresh bread. A man selling newspapers calls out headlines about politics in far-off places. Albert listens, but seems more intrigued by the vendor's mechanical carter, simple axle and wheel arrangement than by the news itself. That's how his mind works, always turning toward the mechanics of things, the structures underneath appearances. One afternoon, you find him in the yard with a string, a weight, and a stick. He's swinging the weight in a slow circle, watching how the string stretches and changes tension. He's not yet thinking in terms of centrifugal force or vectors, but he is already testing, comparing, and noticing. It asks the kind of quiet play that builds a scientist's mind without him realizing it. The compass remains on his desk for years, not as a toy, but as a kind of talisman. Whenever he feels stuck or tired of his schoolwork, he will sometimes pick it up, hold it in his hand, and let the needle swing back to its steady point. It's a reminder that the world is bigger, more intricate, and more surprising than it appears in a textbook. By the time evening falls, the lamplighter has made his way down the street, and the last traces of sunlight fade into the blue-gray of night. You're sitting by the fire in the Einstein home, and Albert is quietly sketching little arrows and circles on a scrap of paper. He doesn't know it yet, but this habit of seeing connections between small observations and larger forces will shape the rest of his life. In the background, Pauline begins to play the piano, her music filling the room with a slow, graceful rhythm. The compass lies nearby, catching a glint of lamplight on its glass face. You can almost hear the soft hum of questions forming in his mind, questions that will one day travel far beyond this little room, out into the vast, invisible structures of the universe. The air in Zurich is cooler than Munich, carrying the crisp scent of the Limot River as you walk along the cobbled streets with Albert. It's the mid-1890s now, and the move to Switzerland marks a shift in his life. The city hums with a quieter, more measured energy than the industrial bustle he left behind. Here, the buildings wear pale stone facades, the trams roll smoothly along their tracks and spill warm light into the evening streets. Albert has come to study at the Swiss Federal Polytechnic, though the path here was not perfectly straight. Before arriving, he had already made a bold decision to leave behind the rigid German school system, where the rote drills and authoritarian tone left little room for the kind of questioning he valued. Historians still argue whether this choice was born from frustration or from a strategic move toward a freer intellectual climate, but standing here beside him, you can feel it's both. You follow him through the Polytechnic's tall wooden doors, into halls that echo softly with footsteps and low conversation. Here, the atmosphere is different. Professors and students mingle more freely, exchanging ideas rather than simply delivering them from the top down. The curriculum is challenging. Physics, mathematics, philosophizable. The learning feels alive, driven by curiosity. Outside of lectures, Albert spends long afternoons in sketching notes on scraps of paper while sipping thick coffee. The air in these places is warm and rich, with the scent of roasted beans, and the soft murmur of other patrons creates a kind of background music for his thoughts. Sometimes he's alone, deep in concentration. Other times he's joined by classmates, debating theories in voices just above a whisper, so as not to disturb the elderly man at the next table reading his newspaper. It's here in Zurich that Albert meets Mileva Marek, a fellow student from Serbia. She is quiet, sharp-minded, and deeply invested in the same questions that keep him awake at night. The two spend hours walking the riverbanks, discussing mathematics and exchanging ideas about the nature of reality. While the precise role she played in his later work is still debated, you can sense the intellectual companionship between them, a meeting of minds as much as of hearts. The city itself seems to encourage reflection. On Sunday mornings, Albert sometimes wanders to the edge of Lake Zurich, where the surface mirrors the sky in pale blues and silvers. He'll sit on a bench, sketchbook on his knee, and watch how the water changes under the shifting light. It's not so different from the way he once watched leaves in a Munich gutter, still seeking patterns, still noticing the quiet, often overlooked rhythms of nature. Money is tight during these years. His family's finances are strained, and Albert lives simply. You see him mending his own clothes, brewing tea in a small, dented pot, and buying bread from the cheapest baker he can find. Yet there's a lightness to this simplicity, a freedom in knowing that what he needs most, his mind, is still his own. There's a little-known story from this time. In the evenings, Albert and some friends would hold informal study sessions in each other's rooms, often drifting off topic into music. Someone would bring out a violin, and before long, equations gave way to melodies. These moments weren't just social, they were the kind of mental rest that allows big ideas to take root quietly in the background. One winter afternoon, snow falls gently over the city, softening every sound. You follow Albert to the library, where tall shelves rise like wooden cliffs, lined with volumes on physics, philosophy, and mathematics. He pulls down a book on Maxwell's equations, the mathematical description of electricity and magnetism, and begins copying them carefully into his notes. These equations describe the same invisible forces that once held him captive over that little brass compass. The connection is quiet but unmistakable. Walking back through the snow, his coat buttoned high against the wind, he talks softly about light, what it is, how it moves, whether its speed is always the same. The ideas are still loose threads, not yet woven into the fabric of a theory. But you can feel him tugging at them, gently, persistently, even when the world isn't watching. By the time spring comes, Zurich feels like home. The rivers run faster, the trees blossom, and students spill into the parks with books and notebooks. Albert is still balancing the demands of coursework with his own restless explorations. But in this city, that restlessness feels like a gift rather than a flaw, and as you walk past the Polytechnic's tall windows, you can see him inside head, bent over his papers, brow furrowed, already leaning toward the horizon of his own ideas. The steady hum of the Swiss Patent Office greets you as you step inside with Albert. It's 1902 now, and the bright promise of graduation has given way to the reality of finding work. Academic positions have been elusive, but this modest office in Bern offers a steady paycheck. A desk and long hours of quiet, perhaps more valuable to him than anyone realizes. The room smells faintly of ink and paper, the air heavy with the slow rhythm of bureaucratic work. Files are stacked neatly, rubber stamps rest beside ink pads, and the sound of pens scratching on forms fills the background. Albert's desk is tucked against a wall, where a tall window lets in light that shifts slowly across his workspace throughout the day. Here, his task is to review patent applications for new devices, electrical circuits, mechanical instruments, and gadgets of all shapes and purposes. The work demands precision. He reads each description carefully, checks the diagrams for clarity, and makes sure the proposed inventions are truly novel. Most of his colleagues see the job as routine, even dull, but Albert treats it like an exercise in imagination. Every diagram is a story, every device a question about how the world could work a little differently. There's a little-known quirk about these years. Albert sometimes finishes his assigned reviews early, then quietly turns to his own calculations, scribbling on scraps of paper between official duties. Historians still argue whether his supervisors knew and tolerated this, or whether he simply had a gift for making it look like he was still buried in patent forms. Either way, the office becomes his unlikely laboratory. Evenings are his own. After leaving the building, you walk with him through the streets of Bern, past bakeries closing for the night and street lamps flickering on. He often heads to a small apartment where Mileva waits, their young son Hans playing nearby. The space is modest, worn wooden floors, a narrow kitchen but filled with the warmth of books, music, and conversation. Some nights, he meets with a group of friends who call themselves the Olympia Academy, a playful name for their informal discussion circle. They gather in living rooms, drink tea or wine, and debate everything from physics to philosophy to literature. It's here that Albert's ideas about light, time, and motion begin to sharpen. Discussions stretch late into the night, the smoke from their pipes curling lazily in the lamplight. During the day at the office, the rhythm continues. Ink, paper, diagrams, and the low hum of clerks working quietly in their corners. Albert keeps a small notebook in his jacket pocket, jotting down thoughts whenever inspiration strikes. Sometimes it's just a single question. What would it look like to ride alongside a beam of light? But even those fragments have a way of growing in his mind long after the office lights go out. One afternoon, you watch him study a patent application for a device that synchronizes clocks at a distance. The principle is simple enough, but for Albert, it stirs deeper thoughts about how time is measured and what it really means for two events to be simultaneous. He doesn't yet have all the answers, but the seeds of his later breakthroughs are already sprouting between the lines of routine paperwork. The pace of life in Bern suits him in an unexpected way. The steady schedule gives him mental space, and the variety of devices he reviews keeps his mind engaged. He can spend an hour studying the gears of a new type of watch, and then, in a quiet moment, drift into thinking about the very nature of time itself. By late evening, the streets grow quiet, and you follow him home through the cool air. In the apartment, a small lamp casts a warm glow over the table where he unpacks his papers. He sets aside the official forms and pulls out his own notes, spreading them like a puzzle before him. The violin rests nearby, and after a stretch of calculation, he'll pick it up and play a few bars soft, meandering, almost as if the music is helping him find his way through the equations. Bern, in these years, may not look like the birthplace of revolutionary science. There are no grand laboratories, no bustling lecture halls, just a young man at a desk, reading other people's inventions while quietly building his own. But in the patient hum of the patent office, with its endless stream of diagrams and descriptions, Albert is quietly assembling the framework of ideas that will soon change the way humanity understands reality. The year is 1905, and the air in Bern feels charged in a way that has nothing to do with the weather. You walk alongside Albert through the narrow streets as the bells of the Zittglog clock tower chime softly above you. He's heading home from the patent office the same as any other day. But you can sense there's something quietly different about the way he carries himself. His thoughts seem heavier, more urgent, as if the ideas he's been tending in private are now ready to step into the light. This will be remembered as his Onus Mirabilis, his miracle year, though at the time the world doesn't yet know it. In the small, worn apartment that he shares with Mileva, the air is warm with the faint smell of ink and candle wax. His desk is covered in papers, some stacked neatly, others spread out in a loose constellation of equations, diagrams, and scribbled notes. He sits down, picks up his pen, and begins to write. Over the course of this single year, Albert will publish 4 groundbreaking papers in the Annalen der Physik, each one challenging the boundaries of what physicists believe they understand. The first deals with the photoelectric effect, proposing that light behaves not just as a wave, but also as discrete packets of energy. Quanta, an idea so strange that even he isn't sure how far it will reach. The second explores Brownian motion, the jittery dance of particles in liquid, offering tangible proof of atoms' existence. The third, special relativity, redefines space and time themselves. And the fourth, a brief note, almost tossed in at the end, introduces an equation that will become one of the most famous in history, E equals to mc. You watch him work into the late hours of the night, the lamp casting a golden halo over his desk. Outside, the city is quiet. The only sounds the occasional clip-clop of a horse-drawn carriage or the soft patter of rain on the window. Inside, the scratch of his pen keeps time with the steady rhythm of his thinking. It's remarkable how unremarkable the surroundings are. No grand laboratory, no team of assistants, no powerful university backing his work. Just a man, a desk, and a mind willing to question the foundations of reality. Historians still argue whether his isolation from academic politics gave him the freedom to think more boldly, or if it simply forced him to find a different way into the conversation. A small, quirky moment breaks the intensity. Late one evening, after hours of calculations, Albert puts down his pen, picks up his violin, and plays a slow, lilting melody. Mileva sits nearby, quietly turning the pages of a book. The music fills the small apartment, softening the sharp edges of the day's thinking. When the last note fades, he smiles faintly, then returns to his papers as if the music had been another kind of equation, one that didn't need solving. The publication of his papers is not met with instant fame. The scientific community notices, of course, some with excitement, others with skepticism. In and lecture halls across Europe, physicists debate his ideas, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with a kind of cautious disbelief. But for Albert, the work itself has been the reward. There is a quiet satisfaction in seeing thoughts once confined to his own mind now moving through the wider world. On a warm summer evening, you walk with him along the river, the air scented with the faint sweetness of blooming linden trees. He talks softly about the nature of time, not as a fixed stage on which events unfold, but as something intertwined with space itself, shaped by motion and speed. The ideas sound almost like poetry when spoken aloud, yet you can tell they are built from precise, unyielding logic. The year winds on, each paper sent into the world like a quiet ripple spreading across a still pond. The ripples grow, even if he cannot yet see how far they will reach. The patent office remains his steady anchor, but now the hours after work feel even more precious. A space where he can step out of the ordinary and into the vast, invisible structures he's beginning to map. One evening, as you watch the last light fade from the sky, he pauses at the window, looking out over Bern's rooftops. "It's all connected," he says softly, almost to himself. You're not sure whether he's talking about space and time, matter and energy, or simply the way life's small steps can lead to moments like this. But either way, you understand. The following years see Albert moving beyond Bern, stepping into the wider world of European academia. You accompany him to Zurich, where he briefly lectures and immerses himself in conversations with some of the era's most influential thinkers. The city hums with a different energy than the calm streets of Bern. Here, the clatter of tramcars mixes with the chatter of students and professors strolling along the Limmat River. You notice how alert Albert is to everything around him. The angles of the bridges, the rhythm of footsteps, even the faint scent of coffee drifting from these observations, though mundane, seem to feed his imagination. Albert's academic career begins in earnest, though not without its challenges. He secures a position as a lecturer at the University of Zurich, and each day is filled with quiet responsibilities, preparing notes, giving talks, and mentoring students. You sit beside him as he drafts lecture material on theoretical physics, watching how he carefully balances rigorous equations with gentle explanations. Historians still argue whether his approach to teaching was revolutionary for its time or simply an extension of the meticulous thought habits developed in his patent office years. Either way, students find his style approachable, even soothing, his voice calm, his gestures measured, as if every lesson is a quiet meditation on the universe's inner workings. Amid the academic rhythm, life's personal side unfolds gently. He walks often with Mileva, discussing ideas in between pauses for laughter or small, playful debates. She sometimes teases him about the way he hums while solving problems, a faint melody that becomes a soundtrack to the evenings. In the quieter moments, you glimpse Albert's reflective side. He journals thoughts about space, time, and the nature of reality, as well as small observations about the people and city around him. These notes, seemingly ordinary, are part of the foundation for the deep insights he will soon share with the world. A curious, little-known detail emerges in these years. Albert enjoyed riding his bicycle long distances, using the motion not just for travel but as a form of mental exercise. Walking or cycling, he would ponder problems, imagining frames of reference and the behavior of light. Scholars still debate whether these physical routines were critical to his creative process or merely a pleasant diversion. Watching him, you suspect it is a mixture of both, the mind and body collaborating in quiet, harmonious ways. Academic life also brings exposure to new scientific networks. He exchanges letters with physicists across Europe, discussing topics that range from the properties of light to the subtleties of electromagnetic theory. You notice the care with which he writes, the gentle humor in some of his observations, and the patience with which he navigates disagreements. Even when critiques are pointed, he responds thoughtfully, never dismissively, embodying a respect for ideas that transcends ego. During this period, he also begins experimenting with teaching methods that feel unusual for the time. Instead of relying solely on rote repetition or strict lecture formats, Albert encourages students to visualize problems, to consider thought experiments in their minds before attempting calculations. One evening, while demonstrating such an exercise, he tells his class to imagine riding alongside a beam of light, and you watch as the room quiets, the students' faces reflecting wonder and curiosity. It's a small moment, yet one that encapsulates his approach, merging imagination with disciplined reasoning, always gentle, always patient. Outside of academia, the city's life continues with subtle rhythms. Tram bells, the soft clink of cafe cups, and the distant notes of street musicians. Albert is often drawn to the quieter spaces, gardens, or riverbanks, where he can let thoughts wander. Here, he sketches new ideas, sometimes simply doodling diagrams on scraps of paper that flutter with equations, sometimes stopping midline to hum a melody or jot a poetic observation. These small rituals, repeated daily, reinforce the delicate balance of thought and reflection that defines this phase of his life. The years in Zurich are formative in ways both large and small. His papers, lectures, and private contemplations slowly create ripples across the European scientific community. You can see the subtle shift in Albert. From the patient, curious examiner of inventions at the patent office to a thinker, increasingly aware of his potential to reshape understanding. Yet, he carries this realization lightly, never boasting, always returning to the quiet rhythms of study, conversation, and gentle reflection. As the sun sets over the city, casting a soft glow on the river, Albert pauses on a bridge, leaning lightly against the railing. It's strange, he muses softly, how much you can see by simply paying attention to small, ordinary moments. And as you walk beside him in the fading light, you understand that this is the essence of his journey so far. A life built on patient curiosity, quiet observation, and an enduring love for the world's subtle mysteries. Time drifts softly as Albert moves to Prague, embracing a new chapter that blends intellectual challenge with the quiet rhythms of daily life. You accompany him through the streets, cobblestones warmed by the early spring sun, the subtle scent of fresh bread wafting from bakeries mingling with the faint perfume of river waters. The city feels both vibrant and serene, a place where ideas can grow in the midst of ordinary life. Here, Albert takes up a full professorship at the German university, a role that brings both responsibility and opportunity. His lectures are calm, deliberate, each word chosen with care to guide students through complex concepts. You watch him use the chalkboard as a canvas, diagrams expanding into gentle constellations of thought, equations flowing like quiet streams rather than jagged peaks of difficult abstraction. Scholars still argue whether his style influenced the future of physics teaching, or simply reflected his natural inclination toward patience and clarity. Regardless, students respond with curiosity and quiet admiration. often lingering after class to discuss small puzzles or theoretical musings. Life outside the lecture hall is equally absorbing. Albert enjoys long walks along the Vltava River, where he contemplates time and space while observing the gentle movements of swans and the soft ripple of water. You notice a quirky habit. He sometimes stops mid-step to sketch a fleeting idea on a scrap of paper, then folds it carefully into his coat pocket. These small moments, almost invisible to the world, are part of the quiet discipline that nourishes his mind. During this period, he deepens friendships with fellow scientists, exchanging letters that are more like meditative reflections than formal correspondences. He writes with understated humor, peppering serious insights with gentle remarks about daily life or the idiosyncrasies of colleagues. Historians still debate whether these interactions influenced the development of general relativity, or if they simply offered a comforting companionship in an otherwise demanding career. Either way, the exchanges reveal a thinker grounded in curiosity and a light-hearted patience. Evenings are often spent at home, where the rhythm of domestic life provides a soothing counterpoint to the intensity of theoretical work. You notice Albert tending small household details with Mileva, sharing quiet laughter over minor frustrations, or reading aloud passages from classical literature. Music remains a gentle companion. The soft strains of his violin echo through the apartment, weaving a peaceful backdrop to contemplations of the cosmos. A small, charming anecdote punctuates this time. He once carried a violin under his arm to a faculty meeting, claiming he needed inspiration before discussing relativity. Colleagues recall watching him, puzzled, as he drew the bow slowly across the strings, the soft notes filling the room. The moment, simple and unassuming, reflects the delicate balance Albert maintains between rigorous thought and the gentle pleasures of life. As the seasons shift, so too do the subtler threads of his work. He begins exploring the nuances of gravitation, thinking beyond flat space-time, allowing imagination and logic to intertwine. You walk with him late at night through quiet streets, gas lamps flickering overhead, and sense the patience in his pace, the deliberate unfolding of a mind wrestling gently with the universe. This period in Prague is not marked by sensational milestones, but by the quiet accumulation of thought, observation, and disciplined reflection. Each day builds upon the last, a sequence of gentle routines, soft conversations, and contemplative solitude. Albert's life here exemplifies a subtle rhythm, the interplay of study, teaching, reflection, and small joys, all wrapped in a quiet, persistent curiosity that will soon lead him to ideas capable of reshaping how the world understands reality. Albert's return to Zurich brings a sense of familiarity, a gentle homecoming after the Prague interlude. You stroll with him through the quiet streets, noticing how the sunlight glints softly off the limit, casting reflections that shimmer like thought itself. He resumes his teaching position, balancing lectures with private contemplations, and you see how these repeated routines create a calm structure that allows deeper exploration of his ideas. Scholars still debate whether this period of relative stability was crucial for the mental clarity that led to his groundbreaking work, or merely a peaceful pause before larger storms of recognition. The patent office years might have felt like preparation, but now, immersed in academic life, Albert's mind moves more freely. You observe him sketching thought experiments in the margins of lecture notes, often pausing to hum a faint tune as he considers the implications of light beams, clocks, and moving observers. These exercises, at first seeming abstract, are quietly building toward a profound simplicity. The realization that time and space are not fixed, but elastic and relative. It's a concept that he nurtures slowly, allowing it to mature in the safety of familiar surroundings, much like tending a delicate plant. Evenings in Zurich bring another layer of intimacy and reflection. You watch him with Maleva, exchanging gentle conversation over simple meals, sometimes interrupted by laughter or playful teasing. A curious little-known fact emerges here. He often walked at night with a small notebook tucked in his coat, jotting fleeting insights inspired by streetlights, passing carriages, or the rhythm of distant church bells. These moments, seemingly mundane, are seeds of later genius. Historians still argue whether these nocturnal strolls directly influenced his revolutionary equations. But it is clear they nourished a contemplative and serene approach to problem-solving. His social circles in Zurich are calm but intellectually stimulating. Albert discusses philosophy and physics with colleagues over tea, often drawing connections between seemingly unrelated phenomena. You sense his joy in the delicate balance between observation and imagination, the patient teasing out of nature's subtleties without hurry or force. A small anecdote illustrates this. Once, during a lecture, he paused mid-derivation, looked at the class, and quietly asked, "Have you ever noticed how shadows lengthen differently depending on your pace?" The students smile, puzzled yet intrigued, unaware they are witnessing the gentle cultivation of a radical thought process. Amid the personal and professional rhythm, Albert nurtures a growing curiosity about the very fabric of the universe. Light, motion, and time occupy his thoughts constantly. You watch him scribble diagrams of moving clocks and imagining the perspective of a rider alongside a beam of light. A concept now familiar but revolutionary in its time. Each note is written softly, almost as if whispering to the universe, coaxing secrets from phenomena that others had overlooked. The quiet care in his observations contrasts sharply with the boldness of the insights they will eventually yield. A charming detail emerges. He sometimes brought breadcrumbs to pigeons near his apartment, pausing to observe their flight patterns with the same attentive patience he applied to physics. In these gentle moments, you sense a mind comfortable with both abstraction and the small rhythms of everyday life. He blends the tangible and intangible, the ordinary and extraordinary, with soft curiosity rather than urgency. As weeks turn into months, Zurich becomes a haven for Albert's thought. The combination of routine, serene settings, and the occasional whimsical habit, like humming while calculating or feeding birds between lectures, creates a fertile landscape for ideas. You notice how these habits, though minor, contribute to a steady, contemplative mind, setting the stage for the quiet, revolutionary brilliance that will soon emerge. His life, gently unfolding, is a testament to the power of patient observation, soft reflection, and the subtle joy of following curiosity wherever it leads. The year 1905 arrives with a quiet rhythm that belies the extraordinary ideas simmering in Albert's mind. You walk alongside him through the familiar streets of Zurich, feeling the gentle hum of early spring, the distant clatter of tram wheels, the soft rustle of budding leaves, and the muted chatter of passers-by. It is in this seemingly ordinary environment that Albert's thoughts begin to coalesce into something profound. He refers to it playfully in letters to friends as my mirthful little year of miracles, though no one could yet predict the quiet storm of insight about to emerge. Historians still debate whether the serene structure of his daily life directly fostered this remarkable creativity, or if his genius would have surfaced regardless of surroundings. In the small office at the Patent Bureau, Albert continues his routine, examining inventions and their subtle mechanisms. You notice the careful attention he pays to every detail, the gentle curiosity that turns mundane technical sketches into thought experiments. His mind drifts to fundamental questions about light, motion, and energy, and these meditations slowly crystallize into papers that, when published, will forever alter physics. One charming, little-known fact: he would occasionally doodle playful sketches of bicycles and clocks on official forms, delighting in imagining how speed might distort time itself. These whimsical sketches reveal the soft blend of humor and intellect that permeates his work, making abstract concepts approachable even to a gentle mind like yours. Albert's correspondence during this year reflects both quiet humility and steadfast curiosity. You read along as he exchanges letters with milder friends and colleagues, soft laughter hidden between words, small personal observations about the weather or a misbehaving kettle. Within these lines, he nudges the boundaries of known physics, considering the interaction of light and motion, the equivalence of energy and mass, and the relative perception of time. Historians still argue whether his insights emerged more from methodical thought experiments or from playful imagination. But either way, they unfold with remarkable serenity. He publishes 4 papers that year, each a quiet revolution. You imagine yourself beside him as he walks home in the fading light, contemplating the implications while feeding his curiosity like a gentle fire. One paper redefines energy and mass. Another examines Brownian motion. A third delves into the photoelectric effect, hinting at the subtle quantization of light. And the fourth introduces special relativity, softly challenging centuries of assumptions about time and space. These concepts, radical yet elegantly simple, emerge not with fanfare but with careful, thoughtful precision, as if whispering to the world rather than demanding attention. Outside work, life maintains its gentle cadence. Music continues to soothe him. Violin strings hum softly in the apartment, echoing his calm determination. Long walks in nearby parks and quiet cafes provide breathing space, while playful interactions with neighbors and students create gentle grounding amidst intellectual exploration. A small, quirky anecdote. He once explained the bending of light around the sun to a curious friend using only a spoon and a candle flame. A soft demonstration of cosmic principles in domestic terms. By the end of 1905, Albert's miraculous year has quietly reshaped the intellectual landscape. Though recognition comes gradually, you witness the balance between rigorous thought, whimsical curiosity, and calm reflection. A triad that allows revolutionary ideas to emerge without stress or haste. These months exemplify a mind at ease with itself, exploring the universe gently, savoring small discoveries, and patiently guiding humanity toward a new understanding of reality. Life after 1905 carries a subtle shift, a soft unfolding of recognition mingled with familiar routines. You walk beside Albert as he navigates both the calm streets of Bern and the quiet corridors of academia, noticing how public attention begins to touch him gently rather than overwhelm. Newspapers and scientific journals mention his name, yet he greets this acknowledgement with a reserved smile, more interested in the slow exploration of questions than the fleeting glow of fame. Historians still debate whether this period of growing recognition influenced his subsequent work or simply provided a comforting backdrop against which he could continue to think freely. In his study, Albert surrounds himself with small, tangible objects, clocks, compasses, and everyday tools, which he uses to explore thought experiments. You notice a particular habit. He often taps the pencil lightly against the desk, while imagining how an observer moving at nearly the speed of light would perceive events. These contemplations, quiet and almost meditative, gently guide him toward general relativity. The soft rhythm of his work reflects the careful patience that has characterized much of his life. Ideas develop slowly, nourished by observation, calculation, and imagination alike. Correspondence with colleagues continues, carrying both curiosity and gentle humor. Letters arrive from Europe and beyond, containing questions, reflections, and small debates about the implications of his papers. You imagine Albert pausing between sentences, smiling at the playful phrasing of a peer, or pondering a nuanced objection. Historians still argue about the extent to which these exchanges shaped his theories, but the letters reveal a man attentive to both the rigor of science and the quiet art of human connection. Outside the office, Albert enjoys long walks along tree-lined avenues, the soft sound of his footsteps mingling with the distant chatter of passers-by and the occasional bird-song. A little-known tidbit: he sometimes stopped to sketch the shadows cast by the moving sun, curious about patterns and angles, delighting in small, almost imperceptible lessons from nature. These subtle observations, intertwined with gentle reflection, feed the ever-growing tapestry of his understanding. Domestic life provides additional calm. Mileva and Albert share quiet evenings, reading or discussing ideas, the soft crackle of a fireplace creating a comforting rhythm. Music continues to weave a gentle thread through their days, with the violin offering both inspiration and relaxation. Occasionally, friends drop by for tea, and Albert uses these moments to test playful analogies or soft demonstrations of theoretical principles, often eliciting quiet laughter. This period, while not marked by dramatic events, is rich with patient cultivation of thought. Albert walks a path defined by gentle curiosity, reflection, and measured experimentation. Each day unfolds with a rhythm that balances discovery and rest, intellect and play, shaping a mind capable of extraordinary insight, while remaining deeply connected to the calming textures of ordinary life. As the years progress, Albert's work draws him into broader scientific communities, yet he maintains a serene, contemplative pace. You accompany him to quiet meetings and small conferences, where the soft murmur of conversation blends with the occasional clink of teacups. Here he gently presents his ideas on the bending of light by gravity, a notion that feels almost poetic in its simplicity. Historians still argue whether these early presentations fully conveyed the depth of his insights, or whether the true significance only became apparent later. But in these moments, you sense a patient mind carefully tending the seeds of understanding. Travel occasionally punctuates his days, yet even journeys are undertaken with a calm deliberateness. You picture him on a slow train ride, watching the countryside pass by, notebook in hand, jotting observations about light, motion, and time. A quirky detail: he sometimes sketches passenger shadows as they shift with the sun, noting angles and lengths as if the mundane world itself is a gentle laboratory. These small acts of curiosity reveal the same blend of playfulness and rigor that has guided his life, an ability to see the extraordinary in ordinary moments. At home, evenings retain their familiar rhythm. The gentle strumming of a violin, quiet discussion with Mileva, and the soft rustle of papers create a sanctuary for thought. Albert occasionally loses himself in philosophical readings, pondering the nature of reality and the limits of knowledge. You watch him pause mid-sentence, perhaps smiling at a clever insight, then scribble a note or hum a soft tune. Historians still debate the influence of these philosophical musings on his scientific work. but it is clear they nurture a mind open to multiple perspectives. Amid these routines, Albert also develops a soft awareness of the broader social and political changes swirling around Europe. Yet he navigates this turbulent backdrop with a quiet focus, allowing concern to coexist with calm reflection rather than dominate his mind. He gently mentors younger scientists, encouraging curiosity and careful observation rather than competition, cultivating an atmosphere of quiet intellectual generosity. A small, charming anecdote illustrates his gentle engagement with daily life. While walking through a garden, he noticed a leaf falling and spent several minutes discussing with a friend how its descent mirrored the bending of light in space, translating cosmic principles into everyday observation. Such moments reflect his ability to intertwine profound insight with playful attention to the world around him. During this period, Albert's reputation continues to grow. Yet his life remains grounded in the rhythms of curiosity, reflection, and subtle joy. Each thought experiment, correspondence, and quiet observation contributes to a steady progression of understanding, a gentle unfolding of brilliance that respects both the mysteries of the universe and the serene textures of daily life. The 1920s bring both recognition and gentle challenges. As Albert steps more fully into the international spotlight, you walk with him along cobblestone streets of Berlin and across lecture halls, the soft echoes of applause mingling with the low hum of city life. Though celebrated widely for general relativity, he continues to approach each day with quiet curiosity rather than showy pride. Historians still argue whether the public acclaim altered his work or merely highlighted the calm persistence that had always defined him. In these years, he travels more frequently, attending conferences and visiting academic institutions. You imagine him on a slow train to a lecture, notebook resting on his knee, soft pencil scratches capturing fleeting thoughts about unified field theory or subtle anomalies in measurements of light. A small, little-known fact: he would sometimes practice violin in the evenings aboard trains, the faint strains blending with the gentle rhythmic clatter of wheels on rails, finding comfort and inspiration in music even while on the move. These journeys, while outwardly busy, are inwardly meditative, allowing his mind to wander through scientific and philosophical landscapes alike. Albert's correspondence grows in both volume and warmth. Letters from colleagues, friends, and admirers arrive regularly, containing thoughtful questions and gentle debates. You notice him savoring each message, responding with meticulous care and soft humor, balancing rigorous analysis with approachable explanations. Historians still argue whether these exchanges subtly redirected the course of his later theories, but they clearly nurture a calm, deliberate rhythm in his intellectual life. Domestic life retains a similar serenity, punctuated by quiet meals, soft music, and reflective walks. One charming anecdote: he sometimes tested students' understanding of relativity by illustrating a thought experiment using two moving trams in a nearby park, smiling at their slow dawning comprehension. These exercises reveal his patient, almost playful approach to teaching, highlighting a consistent thread in his life, blending rigorous inquiry with gentle curiosity. Even as political tensions rise across Europe, Albert preserves inner calm. He continues to meditate on the relationship between science and humanity, quietly advocating for peace and understanding in subtle ways. You feel the rhythm of his life as a blend of observation, reflection, and serene engagement, a mind fully present, gently exploring both the cosmos and human nature, while soft melodies of violin strings underscore each quiet revelation. Through these years, recognition, Travel, correspondence, and teaching converge into a tapestry of calm productivity. His life remains guided by curiosity, patience, and a gentle joy in discovery, illustrating how quiet perseverance can harmonize with the unfolding complexities of both science and society. As the 1930s approach, Albert's life shifts gently yet unmistakably, influenced by both scientific pursuit and global changes. You walk beside him along quiet streets in Berlin, noticing the subtle tension in the air outside his study, but also the soft continuity of his routines. He continues to explore the mysteries of physics, especially the elusive unified field theory, moving through problems with patient, almost meditative persistence. Historians still argue how much the political upheaval shaped his later theories. Yet his inner rhythm remains a steady current of thought, reflection, and curiosity. Travel becomes more purposeful, often intertwined with the soft duty of public engagement. You observe him boarding a train to give lectures, carrying only essential papers and a small violin tucked under his arm, a quirky, little-known detail. During these trips, he sometimes amused himself by counting tiles on station platforms, or imagining how shadows of passing objects would appear to someone moving near the speed of light, letting simple curiosities merge with complex theory. This gentle blending of daily observation and intellectual reflection characterizes much of his work and life. His correspondence and mentorship expand internationally. Letters arrive from students, colleagues, and other thinkers, often filled with questions, small debates, or requests for guidance. You notice Albert responding with warmth, soft humor, and careful reasoning, nurturing minds without hurry or pressure. Historians still argue whether these exchanges directly influenced his later breakthroughs, but they clearly sustain a deliberate, thoughtful cadence in his days. Domestic life in these years has its quiet joys. Music remains a constant companion. Evenings are often spent with violin strings weaving gentle patterns through dimly lit rooms. Albert enjoys simple meals, walks through gardens or parks, and reflective conversation with close friends and family. One charming anecdote: he once paused mid-walk to gently explain the bending of light using a street lamp's shadow and a passing dog, blending cosmic insight with everyday observation in a subtle, playful way. Amid rising tension in Europe, Albert maintains a soft focus on learning and reflection. He contemplates not only the structure of the universe, but also the role of humanity within it, offering gentle guidance through letters and interviews. His life during this decade illustrates a harmonious balance of scientific exploration, personal calm, and quiet engagement with the world, revealing a mind steadfastly devoted to understanding while remaining rooted in daily rhythms and small joys. The 1940s arrive with a gentle mixture of reflection, adaptation, and quiet achievement. You accompany Albert as he settles into life in Princeton, moving slowly through leafy paths and softly echoing halls. The weight of prior travels and discoveries balanced by a serene focus on thought and contemplation. Though his fame has grown immense, he navigates it with subtle humor and humility, often deflecting attention toward the beauty of the ideas themselves rather than his own recognition. Historians still argue whether he fully grasped the cultural weight of his renown. Yet you sense a man content in the steady rhythm of curiosity and reflection. In Princeton, daily life takes on a comforting predictability. Morning walks, afternoons in the quiet study, evenings filled with letters, readings, and the gentle hum of conversation, all form a soft cadence that sustains his mind. A little-known fact: he kept a small collection of paperweights and miniature clocks, arranging them meticulously as though each tiny object represented a principle or idea waiting to be explored. These small rituals anchor his work, offering tactile reminders of patterns and order in both physics and life. Correspondence flourishes even more, spanning continents and disciplines. You notice Albert carefully weighing each response, soft pencil gliding across paper, blending encouragement, explanation, and playful illustration. Colleagues and students often remark on the clarity and patience with which he communicates, a gentle style that reflects decades of mindful inquiry. Historians still argue about the impact of his letters on global scientific thought, yet the tone consistently embodies calm curiosity and soft guidance. Amid work and letters, moments of leisure sustain him. He plays violin with the same reflective intensity, often pausing mid-phrase to consider a thought or watch sunlight move across a windowsill. One small anecdote: he sometimes enjoyed feeding birds in the garden, imagining their flight paths as miniature versions of trajectories in space-time, blending nature's quiet rhythms with cosmic reflection. These gentle exercises connect him with the living world, a soft counterpoint to abstract theory. In these final decades, Albert's life becomes a tapestry of gentle discovery, subtle mentorship, reflective writing, and serene observation. Each day flows into the next with thoughtful intent, quiet laughter, and patient attention to both ideas and the small joys surrounding him. You walk alongside him, feeling the gentle pulse of a life devoted to understanding, curiosity, and a soft harmony between mind and world, a rhythm that invites you to breathe slowly and let your thoughts drift gently into reflection. Now, as the evening settles into its slow, quiet rhythm, you can feel the gentle cadence of Albert Einstein's life drawing softly to a close. Picture him in his study one last time. The fading light filtering through tall windows, the pages of notes spread around him like delicate leaves in a calm forest. There is no rush, no urgency, only the soft ticking of a clock, the distant murmur of the world beyond, and the warm, familiar presence of quiet contemplation. You notice the subtle serenity in his gestures, the way he adjusts a sheet of paper, the slight smile as he hums a phrase on his violin, the attentive gaze cast toward the sunlight dancing on the floor. Even as his body ages, his mind continues its gentle exploration, tracing the curves of space-time, the bending of light, and the harmonies of the universe. You are aware of the calm persistence that has guided him through every chapter, an unwavering curiosity, a patient joy in discovery, and an ability to see wonder in both the grand and the ordinary. Historians may still debate the precise impact of each thought or letter, yet the enduring thread is clear: a life lived with attention, care, and quiet brilliance. Imagine the last moments of the day as a soft exhale. The violin rests in its case. Papers are tucked neatly aside, and Albert walks slowly to a window, gazing at the stars beginning to shimmer against the night sky. You sense a gentle connection between his mind and the cosmos, a soft bridge from one day to the next, and a reminder that curiosity and reflection are timeless companions. In these final, hushed moments, you too can feel the rhythm of his life, a cadence of patience, observation, and gentle wonder, settling into your own senses. Allow yourself to drift along this serene path, carrying the soft images of notebooks, train rides, gardens, and violin strings. Let the quiet persistence of his curiosity lull your mind, and imagine the subtle joy he found in observing the world, pondering its mysteries, and sharing gentle insights with others. Here, in this tranquil space, both time and thought expand slowly, inviting you to rest and reflect, softly and without hurry.